Good evening and welcome to Metropolitan College of New York's Mothers with Purpose, Power Players and Parenthood. I'm David Hahn, Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at the college, and I'll be serving as the technical coordinator for this evening's webinar. On behalf of the college, I want to thank Michael Goodwin, a valued adjunct member of the faculty and the president of the Audrey Cohen School for Human Services and Education's Alumni Network, and vice president of the Master of Public Administration Alumni Network, for organizing and producing this event. Our colleague, Tina Giorgio, the college's Director of Communications and Alumni Affairs, will be interacting with you and managing the chat. It is my pleasure to first introduce the college's president, Dr. Joanne Passaro.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Passaro, president of Metropolitan College of New York. We're delighted that you're joining us tonight for a conversation with some of our alumni entitled Mothers with Purpose, Power Players and Parenthood. MCNY's mission is to promote the success of our graduates and to empower them to make positive change in their professional lives, in the lives of their families, and in the lives of our communities. We hope you will enjoy our conversation with these graduates because you will see how they're doing just that. Tonight's keynote speaker is Dr. Joanne Ardovini, Dean of the Audrey Cohen School of Human Services. Joanne, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Passaro said, I am Dr. Joanne Ardovini. I'm the Dean of the Audrey Cohen School of Human Services, Education, Masters in Public Administration, and Community Health Education. Let me give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm a product of immigrants. My mother got married at 16. She had my sister at 17, had me at 21, and was abandoned by her husband when I was 9 months old. My mother worked in the sweatshops of Canal Street to make ends meet. And whenever something went wrong, I would ask her, why do bad things happen, Mom? She said, if you live life right, good things will happen and bad things will happen. Who better than us? And she showed me that grit and tenacity of what Dr. Duckworth talks about in her study of how perseverance can help someone get through rough times. With that said, I then went on to do an undergraduate at Marist College, a dual master's at SUNY Brockport, a PhD at Western Michigan University completed by age 25, and a postdoctorate at the University of Michigan at age 26. I first became a program director at age 31 at Sam Houston State University, and again at Metropolitan College of New York at 35, a full professor at 38, and a dean at 46. One of the things that also occurred to me is I became a single mother of one-year-old twins when I was 31 years old. And as a single mother with primary custody of her children, people would always ask me, how do you do it? Why do you do it? Why do you continue to push yourself to get a better more education or do more research and get published? And even at times having to work at multiple colleges at the same time. And my response was 3 words: coffee, coffee, coffee. No, my response was no other option. I had no other option because my purpose was my children. Now, taking them to school, no other option. Helping them with homework, no other option. Coaching their teams, no other option. Going to every game and practice, no other option. Helping them through heartbreak, no other option. Giving them the talk, no other option. Teaching them how to shave, no other option. Going to college visits, no other option. Staying up, waiting for them to get home safely, no other option. Why no other option? To push myself to be better, to get better for them. So I had no other option but to work, no other option but to do research, no other option but to publish. Again, why? Because as a parent, you are their first role model. You are their stability. You are their foundation. You must be better so that they can be better. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If the foundation is fractured, the building will fall. If the foundation is cracked, the individual will be part of the social problem, not a solution to the social problem. When you have children, the days are extremely long, but the years go by very quickly. It seems like it was just yesterday that I brought them home from the hospital, that I taught them how to tie their shoes, how to ride a bike. But yesterday I sat at my daughter's graduation, college graduation. She graduated a full year early, summa cum laude. Her twin brother sitting next to me, he was just inducted into the College Athletes Honor Society. His baseball team just won its conference championship, and they will be moving on to the NCAA college baseball tournament, national tournament. As I sat there, holding back the tears, I remember the exact moment that I realized that I had to be better, strive better, and have no other option. It was the first night that I came home and I put them in their crib. I sat there all night just looking at them, afraid to fall asleep, and every once in a while poking them to see if they were okay. I'm sure many of you have done the same thing. At that moment, I promised them that I was going to be the best version of myself and to continue to better myself because they deserved it. I would make mistakes, I would apologize for them, but I would promise to learn from them. There was no other option. I now found that my no other option as my children are getting older is my students. I connect with them. So for them, I have no other option but to be the best form of who I can be and to push and continue with the grit and tenacity, because who better than us? I now would like to introduce Ms. Higgins. We will watch a short, brief video on her and her wonderful passage.
Most people have a job. Some have a purpose: to give others a helping hand while getting ahead in their careers. At Metropolitan College of New York, Serena Huggins got her master's in keeping a roof over the heads of families at risk. Now, this single mom helps secure funding to fight homelessness. What's your purpose?
Ms. Higgins, to you.
Thank you. So thank you, President Passaro and Dr. Ardovini, for your remarks. And thank you to all students, faculty, and alum joining us this evening for our panel. Good evening again. My name is Serena Huggins, MPA alum, class of 2013. I'm also currently the treasurer of the MPA Alumni Board and currently an executive director of Veteran Services at Help USA. And as you saw in the previous clip, I still continue to do homelessness services, but right now focusing on our veterans and veteran families who have served this nation. I have the distinct honor of hosting this panel of very distinguished and accomplished women this evening. I was thoroughly impressed reading through everyone's bios and amazed at how all of you manage the various projects you're involved in. It's really a testament to the fact that we are indeed superwomen. We really do it all. And that's the purpose of tonight's event, to give our audience insight on how to successfully balance academics, career, and family. So first, I would like to thank all of our panelists tonight for being here and your willingness to share. And I would like to begin our discussion with Miss Nikki Kearney. So Nikki Kearney has an MPA from West Virginia University with multiple certifications. Currently, she's in a program at Yale Business School for women on corporate boards, while also pursuing certification in business transformation. She is an accomplished sales strategist with Google, which clearly has many layers of responsibilities and tasks. However, I do understand that Nikki, you have a daughter who is currently a standout softball player at Georgia University, and you fly down frequently to see her games. So can you please share with us how you balance traveling to support your daughter and her sports endeavors, as well as managing school and your career?
It's hard. It's hard, but I'd say I take it all with me. At the end of the day, you look at things from a lens of what do you want, or what's important to you, and then what do you have to do. And it's really interesting, as we opened up tonight, one of the things that came to my mind when I was just thinking about what we were going to speak about today, it's amazing what you can do and what you will do when there's no other option, right? So for me, it's very important for me to be there for her. I think the travel and juggling, although it's hard on me, because quite honestly, I've been going every other week. And I might leave on a Thursday night and I still have full meetings on Friday, and I'm taking my last meeting from the car and then I go into her game. But at the end of the day, I think what's even harder, even beyond just me personally and how it impacts me, is also still trying to juggle the other parts of it. My daughter's a freshman. So dealing with the dynamics of what's going on with the pandemic, the fact that she's playing such high level sports, and just dealing with all of that. And the only real answer that I can give you is it's amazing what you'll do when you have no other option. And at the end of the day, it's just not an option for me not to be there for her. It's not an option for me not to show up for work and do really well, because we don't have an option not to do that. Right. I don't get a pass if I want to continue to keep my job or if I want to continue to move forward.
Great, thank you. So I would like to move on in our panel in terms of introductions, and follow up with Amanda Rosado. So Amanda Rosado is an MBA alumni, former president of the MBA Alumni Network, serves on the MCNY Business Advisory Board, and she's currently employed with the Project and Risk Management at Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Also serves as a board member and vice chair of governance at Children of Bellevue, and is a doctoral student at NYU, as well as a mom. So, I've said a mouthful, but, Amanda, speak to us about how you're managing such a full plate.
First and foremost, thank you for inviting me to the panel. It's really exciting to be back at MCNY, albeit virtually, but I'm looking forward to hearing the stories from all these amazing women, leaders, mothers. And it seems that there's a theme of the night already. No other option, right? So juggling everything that I do is really, just time management. Everything that I do, there's a reason for why I do it. Just to share a story about kind of like motherhood for myself. I had my daughter at a very young age. I was 20 years old when I had my daughter, and I was a spoiled kid, so I didn't really know anything about anything. So parenthood for me was really a shock, and I had no other option but to grow up. And for me, I found a lot of nonprofit organizations that provided free services, resources to help me, to coach me, to teach me parenting skills. And I wanted to give back. I promised myself that once I succeeded, I would give back, and that everything that I would do is with intention, and that I would be a role model for my daughter. And so working at the Fed, it's a mission-driven organization. It serves the country. Being on the board at Children of Bellevue, which is also a nonprofit organization that provides services to underserved communities, specifically people of color, that is with intention. I do this because I want to give back to services that have helped me to elevate me and that have helped me to be a better role model for my daughter. And so it's all about time management, but it's really just being intentional in where I put my time.
Great, thank you so much. And speaking of, being a doctoral student at NYU, I want to pivot over to Dr. Levita McMath Turner. So Levita, a few years ago, completed her studies and earned her PhD. understanding how rigorous and time-consuming a doctoral degree can be, especially while working a full-time job. So, can you speak to us also about your journey and how you're managing?
Yes, Serena, thanks for that introduction, and I'm happy to be here with everyone. I'm a believer, and I really try to, be obedient and follow where I think God is leading me. I moved from the Brooklyn Museum, where I had a wonderful career, to CUNY when I was 7 months pregnant. I was recruited by the president at Kingsborough Community College. And I was like, okay, God, I'm a new mom, and I'm an old mom, because my mom was 15 when I was born. So that scared the heck out of me, sort of having to be a child of a teen parent and understanding what that's like. I went the completely opposite direction, because I wanted to feel like I was ready. And so even the idea of moving to a new job while I was 7 months pregnant was really scary, but it was life-changing. I had a wonderful, wonderful career at the Brooklyn Museum, but God moved me to higher ed at exactly the right time, as I was about to become a new mom. And I had a boss who was awesome, and she supported it. I was in higher ed, and I really felt called there. And, I had my master's already, but, you can get a degree for free, in CUNY. And I'm like, that's kind of dumb if I don't do it. So let me look into this. And so, but it had been a long time since I had been in college. I graduated with my master's at 25. At that point, I was like 40 something, had not been in school. It's completely different with going back as an adult. So I took a class as a non-matriculating so I could just test the waters. And I was like, these kids they're young. They're using technology. They got all these, applications that didn't exist, back in 1995. So it was really, really, really scary. But I had a lot of support from my boss. I had a lot of support from, my husband. My daughter was only 4. So I felt like kids are resilient, right? She's little, she'll miss me, but she'll be asleep when I get home. So it's okay. And we found a sitter who could help pick up from daycare and get her home and feed her and all of that kind of stuff. And that really helped. But it was a lot of prayer, a lot of family support from my supervisor at that time. And it took me a while. And I started in 2010. They took credits for my master's, which helped a lot, because I was only taking 2 classes a semester. So doctoral programs are 7 years when you're going full time. So it could have taken a really long time, but it shaved off like 2.5 years taking credits for my master's, which was a blessing. And I just plowed through it. But it still took me 7 years, to defend, from the time I started to the time of my defense in December of 2017. And so, but I really felt like that was, it was the right thing to do. God was just leading me all along, and I didn't have to pay. I mean, what a blessing to be in a position to earn a free doctorate. Like, that is nothing but God. So, and so I just took advantage of it, because, those letters don't make you smarter, but it gives you opportunities, that for others it might not be required, but for women of color, it is most certainly a calling card. One of those things that helps you get through the door a little bit faster. So I just took advantage of it with a lot of support.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. And I want to move to our last panelist, another doctor, Dr. Jocelyn Rainey. She's also an alumna who completed her, of course, her doctorate degree, graduate MS in administration program. Since her graduation, her career continues to climb. She's a former chief administrative officer and executive vice president at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, currently the first Black president of Get Out, Stay Out, a nonprofit program, and has recently joined the elite roster of Crane's 2021 New York's Notable Black Leaders and Executives. So Dr. Rainey, how has this experience been for you in terms of moving up in your career, as well as balancing, your career as well as home?
I think the first thing that, I want to make sure that I say is I think as a mother, the one thing I realized is that, you have to walk in forgiveness for yourself, because it's like the heart, especially when you're a working mother. And as you're trying to improve yourself for the betterment of your family, you're going to make missteps along the way. So the thing that I always say to mothers whenever I get an opportunity to talk to them is like, forgive yourself, move on, and figure out, what you're going to do next time to make it better. When I think about, my career and my academic path, I always think that, I kind of went wherever my passions took me. I graduated from undergraduate school in 1989 and didn't go back to graduate school until I graduated from graduate school in 1997 when MCNY was still Audrey Cohen College. And at that time, my 27-year-old was 2. And I realized that, I didn't want a credential to stop me. And I wouldn't want, I want my children to understand, I never want them to want to have a credential stop them. And it was a moment in time when everyone was saying that, you need a master's degree to move to that next level. And I'm glad as a human resources professional that has changed, because, that's only creating barriers for people of color. But, for me at that time, that was a truth. And I was like, I never wanted a credential to keep me from moving forward. And that meant, similar to Dr. McMath Turner, is that, I had to rely a lot on my husband. I had to rely a lot on my mother-in-law. A lot of times, my husband and my son spent the night at their house so they could eat, so I could finish up the Audrey Cohen program, which was an amazing program for me to be able to work and finish my master's degree. And, I think that my career has always been about equity, and especially equity for people of color. Like, this world is very inequitable. And no matter how much I believed in myself or my family believed in me, I would still walk into rooms and be treated as less than. And I didn't want that for my 2 sons, because what, the world doesn't care if your mother has a doctorate degree or your father has, my husband also, they don't care. All they see are Black boys. And so it has been my life's mission to create equity in this country, equity in New York City. And, and I since have moved on. I got my doctorate degree, and it wasn't free, but it was definitely a vanity project. It was like, I didn't need it at that time, but it was like, what, I have an opportunity to learn more. And I did. I didn't know, what getting that degree was going to do for me, especially as far as broadening me. It doesn't make you smarter, but it definitely makes you broader, right? And so I think that, education is very important. As mothers, is really important to us. For us, if we have those opportunities, to take advantage of them, while still understanding that we need to make space for people who don't make those choices. Today my sons are both college graduates, 27 and 22. One is now working on going to law school. But I do believe that, I want to make sure that they get opportunities that I may not have enjoyed in the workplace because of the color of my skin. So a lot of, what I've done is around creating practices and policies and organizations that are really focused on taking away the barriers for people of color, people who have been negatively impacted by the criminal justice system, and just really thinking about how do we create a world that I want my children to thrive in as well.
Wow, thank you so much. Just hearing from all of you, I definitely resonate with the experience. As a single mom, my daughter is now 14. I'm making that transition from junior high school to high school. So we haven't gotten to the college level yet, but we'll be there soon. But, it takes me back, and it makes me think about when I decided to make that decision, that next step, and to pursue my master's, because at that point, it was, if I didn't get this piece of paper, I can't get to the next step. But, doing so, I was fairly lucky. I was separated from my ex-husband at that time, but, I still had the support that was needed. So, working long hours during the day, I'm full-time, then I'm going to school at night, and I'm coming home to a sleeping child. And as you said, to forgive yourself and not to have any guilt, because I understood that what I was doing was for the betterment of our future, not just mine. And that, eventually, I'm her role model. She will see. And I remember once I finished, that last purpose in the MPA program, my daughter looked at me and said, Mom, you're finished with school, right? I said, yes. She says, okay. Do you think we can go on vacation now? So I realized the entire time she watched me. And it meant a lot to me to know that I'm setting that foundation for her and giving her something to strive for, especially being a woman of color, a Black woman, and understanding how the cards are stacked against us all, professionally, academically. So it's really important. And so I do appreciate, all of your input and insight so far. So, with that said, I do have just a general question for everyone on the panel. At what point in your academic or professional journey, or both, did you, discover your actual passion, what it is that you really wanted to focus on? So I'll start with Amanda.
Sure. So I think there were two key defining moments. I think the first was when my mother decided to go back for her master's. She was 62, and I was like, you're 62, you're going back for your master's? I have no excuses why I don't have a master's. And that really prompted me to apply to MCNY and go through the MBA program. As a result of going through the MBA program, I was able to get promoted through my job from an operational role to a more strategic role. And as an HR business partner, the work that I was doing was very meaningful. I was coaching employees, helping them guide their career path, navigating the organization, helping them figure out what their purpose was. And I had an aha moment one day, and I was like, you know what? This is something that I've always wanted to do. Back when I was doing my bachelor's, my first major was psychology. But then when I realized how many years it was going to take for me to get, become a doctor, I was like, nah, I'm going to switch. And I ended up doing communications. And I feel like I came full circle. And it goes back to, I know a lot of people have heard this before, but like when you do something that you love, it doesn't feel like work. And that was when I realized, like, this is my purpose. I want to help people to define their purpose and their future.
Great, thank you. Follow up with Nikki, same question.
Interestingly, I believe I just am now really recognizing or acknowledging the fact that my passion is really helping other people be successful, other people win. It's interesting. I was listening to everybody else's story, and I think what has driven me throughout my life is just because this is what I need to do, right? My parents died when, I'll share since everybody else did. My parents died when I was 10. My sister raised me. She's 16 years older than me. And it was just really interesting. The dynamics from there are just a little bit different, in terms of how you grow up, in terms of your thought process of things you want to accomplish, right? And so no matter what I've done, it's always been because I want to get there. And the same thing for my daughter. It's been like, I want to help her achieve, right? So when you start, and with that comes some decisions that maybe I would do differently, because I put what I wanted to get and what I wanted to do ahead of really zoning in on what made me happy. The things at that time I could say, honestly, I achieved it because it was making me happy. But when you start to talk about passion, it came not right away. It came through a process of engaging with people and others and working. And so when you look at education, and, I too, my master's in public administration came to me via offer straight out of, graduating from West Virginia. They gave me the opportunity to come back and go for free, But it was then that I started to realize, and develop an interest in a very strong priority focus on something very specific. And from there, I would look at the way I've taken education to help me get to where I am now, to recognize what my passion is constantly taking the opportunity to continue to learn, to constantly recreate myself. I've never had formal mentors. I've never had the benefit of someone saying, let me coach you. That's not the dynamics in which I grew up in, or in the field that I work in, was I ever extended those opportunities. So if I wanted to do something different, make more money, move ahead, I had to figure out a way to do it myself. So my passion has come along the way of continually, taking the opportunity to continue to keep learning, so I'm the best at what I do. And I can showcase that. I can be successful. I can continue to work my talk track. And in the process, it's now that my daughter's going to college and I'm really thinking about what is it that I love? Well, the parts of my job, the things that I get out of interacting with everybody else, is when I'm really helping other people succeed. So I would say it's now that I'm really realizing what my passion is.
Thank you. And I mean, I like that point of, it's constant growth and learning. I'm sorry about my dog. Constant growth and learning to really understand, where you are and really define what that passion is. And that passion can change as well along the way.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. So Lavita, if you can answer that general question for us.
And the question was about how did you find your purpose, passion, right?
Yeah, your academic journey, or professional.
Yeah. I think it just started when I was a kid. I mean, I grew up in the projects of Chicago. So I always saw injustice and inequity. And I was like, I knew, like, this ain't right. Just in a segregated city like Chicago, where there just were places we couldn't go, it wasn't safe. This is in the 70s, 80s. And, I just always felt like this wasn't okay. I went to a church that had been a part of the Underground Railroad. It had a lot of history and historical significance in the city of Chicago. I was raised by a grandmother who was functionally illiterate. I just saw so much, as a kid. And I think I always knew that I wanted to be better, but I wanted to make it better for everybody. And so, I, just happened to move to California because my mother wanted a better life. And I, first gen. So when it's time to apply to college, I have no idea, know nothing about Berkeley or UCLA or any of these schools or what I was really getting into. And I learned quickly, that by all accounts, I was not supposed to be there. I was not a kid from the projects of Chicago, teen parents. The data showed that I was not supposed to be sitting in that classroom. And it was hard, to be in that space and to read these books about, Black people and, our sort of dysfunctional families in this class I was taking. And I was like, whoa, they're talking about me. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to show you. And I just took that moment, in my junior class seminar to say, I'm about to kick down a whole bunch of doors, wherever I can and hold them open. And that's what I've sort of always done. I think I'm an activist that's in spirit. So being at Berkeley, that has a history of protest, and there was like a protest every day, and I was all about it. I mean, it's like, what we fighting for today? More female professors, like better dorms, better food in the cafeteria, that sort of stuff that's funny that you hear about. But we were doing it, and my mother, who lived in the Bay Area at the time, she was like, I saw you on TV. Do y'all ever go to class? Just like, stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm here for it. This is what I'm about. And so it really just instilled in me a purpose, like a reason why that, I wanted to make sure that folks with my background, that we were not an anomaly, and that we didn't all have to be about the money either, because I kind of my peer group, everybody was going into accounting and trying to work for the Deloitte and Touche and all these places. And I was like, yeah, I don't think that's me. but let me try this social work thing over here, this public policy this thing over here, see where I can sort of change rules, change practices, influence, what social workers do or the rules under which they're governed, rather than be one. I wanted to
Right.
set that that path, ahead. So I feel like I've just always been walking in this purpose like this, where, little by little, I would move into different situations where my opportunity for impact would just grow and grow. And that's just how my career has been, because I think my story was meant to be told. I was meant to be one of those examples of kids from the hood who can be successful at an elite institution, who could, find paths to career opportunities that people didn't expect you to be in, but you can still navigate and code switch and find those ways in which you can still be authentic who you are, make sure you're connected to your family, and then still sit at that table and help make decisions. So I think, for me, including where I am now, it's still like, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? But yeah, I'm supposed to be here. And I know that.
Great. Thank you. And last, Jocelyn, same question regarding your journey and how do you discover your passion, your purpose?
I think, I'm third generation college educated. As a 54-year-old woman, that's really rare in our community, right? And I think that I was always raised to believe that if I get a college degree and I'm smart and I speak well, I'm going to have opportunities and I'm going to do well. And you know what? That worked for a while in the beginning of my career. And then as I grew as a professional, I started seeing the barriers that were being put up for me, the discrimination, the inequities that were happening in the workplace. And so even as I was succeeding, I was seeing that, I wasn't being paid the same as the people who didn't look like me. And I realized that, this privilege of being third, generation college educated, as my parents, would say, and, having this degree and having, it really doesn't change the fact that there's just systemic racism, implicit biases in the world that are going to make this difficult for me. And I always say this because I think that, even though I was third generation college educated, I'm also, my parents were divorced. So there was a lot of instability, right? So I had a very varied group of friends, right? And what I saw was living in Brooklyn. I lived in 3 different areas. I lived in Brooklyn at periods of my life. I lived in Connecticut. I lived in Virginia. And I would, have friends who lived all over every community in Brooklyn. And I would see the warmest homes and, and the places that that people would say that, that there's dysfunction or there's issues, right? And so I always knew that as a people that we could be and do whatever we wanted to be and do. And then being in these roles where one time I remember the turning point for me was I had been in an organization, a nonprofit for many years. It was after I had received my master's and I was the head of human resources and they had given out, raises and I knew what everyone was getting. And the CEO at the time, or the ED, told me what my raise was. It was significantly lower than all the operations folks. And he said, "You look unhappy." And I am. And he said, "Well, why?" I go, "Well, either you don't value me or you don't value human resources, right? And I don't know which one it is, but that means that I'm going to have to make a different decision around my career." And I moved from there into the for-profit sector and, and would interview people and hear managers. And one of the companies that I work with, I was interviewing an extremely competent, wonderful African-American woman. And when I would send her on to the hiring manager, they would use code words like, "Oh, she seems like she has an attitude." Well, because she's not smiley or happy or, she's not giggling with you, that she's serious about her role. Or, you send along an African-American man and you would hear that, he seems too corporate. He doesn't seem like he would fit in, right? All of those buzzwords. And so I realized then that my place was at any table that I sit at is to help create policies and practices that are going to change that. And, I've had very supportive CEO at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And I put all of my energy into creating policies and practices that really made room for people to sit at the table, but also for them to feel like they belong, like they had a voice, like they were part of, the organization. And some of that stuff was like, you know what, if the job didn't require a college degree, I would really push hard on the manager for, do you really need that bachelor's degree? And I would put in place, if you interview someone and you say you need a bachelor's degree and someone comes along who's awesome, who doesn't have a bachelor's degree, you can't hire them. You're going to have to repost. You know why? Because women and people of color would look at that ad and wouldn't apply. So now you're going to have to repost it. Or, are put in place like affinity groups. And I took away, high school diplomas for security jobs, because the truth is that there are true barriers put. It's not just like where you live. It's like the lack of resources where you live, right? There are true issues that are happening. So I feel like that has been my life's passion. And, once I realized that was really what I was passionate about. And then my second aha moment was when I realized that I wanted to run my own nonprofit, or run a nonprofit. And I realized that I wanted to run a nonprofit. Initially, I thought I wanted to run a nonprofit that was focused on equity in general. But then I realized, no, I want to run a nonprofit that's focused on equity for Black men. And I look at the young men that I serve, they're 16 to 24. Some of them have been formerly incarcerated. Some of them haven't. They've just been involved in the legal system. And I realized that they have the capacity to do and be whoever they want to be if we invest in them. And that I can put truth to power. I can talk about this work in a way that no one else would talk about it, and make sure that we're always talking about why they're in the system. What are the differences between what's happening in their communities versus what's happening in other communities? Our communities are policed 8 times more than white communities. And then lastly, I just want to say that I look at the women here and I'm so excited because everyone has curls and dreads. And I always say, I try to bring my full self, and I couldn't say it here because everyone else does, to everything that I do. I'm like, I bring all my curls and my curves so that when you see someone who looks like me, you'll know that that person is also competent, because you'll remember that Jocelyn's competent. And so I'm really impressed to see and inspired to see that all of these women in all these leading positions are like bringing their true selves to everything that they're doing.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, representation definitely matters in any field, that we pursue. I'm going to jump around a bit because I have an interesting question from one of the attendees viewing the webinar. And this is an open question to all of you, whoever can answer. Have any of you ever experienced imposter syndrome during your journey, academically and professionally? And if so, how did you recalibrate? How did you recenter yourself and refocus?
Well, I'll just start.
Go ahead.
I deal with that every day.
I was going to say the same thing.
Right. So we have to remember that we're the only ones standing in our own way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows if you're coming correct except you.
Right.
You set the bar in terms of how you want to be viewed, how you want to deliver. Right. But when we mess up, really only person that knows is you.
Right.
I love what you said, Nikki, because I always tell folks, I said, we go home as women and we beat ourselves up when we mess up, right? Or like we beat ourselves up over and over and over again. And it took a lot of work for me to get to a point where I say, okay, I did that. It's done. No one's thinking about me anymore,
Right.
And I'm going to not do that again. Or I've heard, or that wasn't a big mess up. But I also think like there's like the investment in yourself, because I think that that imposter syndrome, it stays with us, right? Like I remember when I moved on from the Navy Yard to my new role, and I was working on, my resume, thinking about all these things, and I worked with a coach, and we got to a point of I was reading my resume, and I was like, oh yeah, I did that. That's who I am, right? But there's times when I have to stop and say, you feel like, I don't know if I should say I did that, right? Like maybe I shouldn't take credit for that. And I'm like, I'm a grown woman who's been doing this for a long time. Yeah, I made that happen. So I think that is really that whole forgiveness and as Nikki said, that idea of, yeah, only person who really knows that you messed up is you. And you can't keep beating yourself up for that. And you have to figure out how to just move on from it.
Great, thank you. And just briefly, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to echo the same sentiments. I deal with it on a daily basis. I'll give you 2 recent examples. So I just started my doctoral program in January at NYU, and it's a cohort of 25 individuals, and majority of them are CEOs, CDOs, CMOs, all C-suite. And then here's me, project risk manager. And, I almost quit the program. I felt like I didn't belong. And it took my crew or my circle to kind of motivate me and remind me that we all have different paths. And there's a reason why you got accepted to the program. The directors and the founders of the program interviewed you and they saw something in you. And if they didn't think that you could do it, then you wouldn't be a part of the program. And I had to, take that and accept it. Sometimes it's like we have this doubt and we see ourselves so differently than the outside world, and we have to do a lot of self-reflection. So that was one experience. And then this panel, look at the amazing women on this panel. When Tina invited me to the panel, I was like, oh my goodness, why do you want me to talk? But again, and I see my friend here that we were literally talking about this earlier today, Renea. And I told her, I was like, I'm suffering from imposter syndrome again. Like, I don't know why they want me. And she's like, Amanda, remember, there's a reason, there's a purpose. Mothers with a purpose. And so I really appreciate my network for that, like my crew, my 5 close friends that I kind of have to go to help me recalibrate.
Great, thank you.
And I think, Serena, if you don't mind, I want to jump in and just echo that, because I think that's something really important that Amanda has shared. I too, you mentioned earlier, I'm in this program for women on boards, Yale Business School, and at the beginning, it was very intimidating. Everyone in there had been CEOs of big companies, Weight Watchers. The list went on. And I just kept questioning. I kept going back to the person and saying, hey, I don't know if I should be in this, in this group, in this cohort. And it was interesting. The same week that we started, that Friday, all of a sudden something happened. And it opened up an opportunity where I just had to speak. Like, I just had to jump in. And it was at that moment that I realized that everyone else, there was an opportunity for them to learn from me. And that was the reason why I was there.
Definitely. And we all have something to bring to the table, and we're all valuable, in our own right, in terms of our skills and our intellect and our input into anything that we do. I know that, just checking on time, and I kind of feel like I'm on network and the producers are yelling in my ear. So thank you all for sharing your experience. But I want to ask, how has, with the pandemic, we're in the midst, where we're trying to get out of it, but it has been such an impactful experience on everyone, regardless of where you are in life. So, how have you managed, to adjust to what is now our new normal, in continuing to manage academics, career, family? I'll start with Lavita, if you can answer that for me briefly.
Okay. I have we're a really small family. It's just my husband, my daughter, and I. And so, we're blessed to have enough space, in our house to spread out so that we're not on top of each other, which is helpful. I just think, the challenge for me last year was that I was interviewing for a very long time last year during the pandemic, which was really stressful. And so trying to balance that with still being present for, my family, and trying to learn about a field that I want to return to, and all of those things. And so it was, and that's a whole nother experience where your whole, interview process, onboarding, starting a new job, all those things happens when you never see people in person. I mean, it's like,
Right.
but I don't know. I just think that, you know, very fortunate, very, very fortunate and blessed. And so it wasn't hard to adjust.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I was having some technical issues. Thank you. And I do want to just open up a general question for everyone as we're about to wind down a bit. You know, as adults, you know, I guess, well, let me kind of rephrase that. You know, when we were all kids, we all had this idea, this grand idea of what we wanted to be, what we wanted to do. So just, you know, considering all of the accomplishments that you've had thus far, you know, if given the opportunity to speak to your younger self, you know, what would you say? What advice would you give her? So just kind of like going around real briefly.
I'll jump in and say, be willing to make mistakes. I know it's very hard for Black people because we just don't have enough space to do that. Like, you know, we don't have a whole lot of second, third, and fourth chances like other folks might. But I also know a lot of people sort of are fearful because we don't have those opportunities to fall back, that we try to go all in the first time out. And when we realize that it's not exactly what we thought it would be, we're afraid to recalibrate because our families are depending on us. Like for many of us, we got a whole lot of people that's coming with us that we're supporting. And so it's a little bit of a challenge to recalibrate and do things over. But I tell my daughter, and I really trying to create a space for her where she knows it's okay to make mistakes. You know, we can be hard on ourselves, we can be hard on our children, you know, because the world is hard on us. And I'm just thinking about that term grace that Jocelyn is like, we don't do that enough, in my view, as a community. And I think that's why we're so stressed. We don't seek mental health, like all of those things. It's just hard. And I would tell myself that next time it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to try to major in anthropology. Just because your grandmother doesn't know what it means doesn't mean it's not the field for you, you know, like, you know, that kind of thing. But that's what we're thinking about, you know, I believe. And so I think that's important.
That's really great. Thank you. Be open to make mistakes. Amanda, your input, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say something along the same lines. Practice self-compassion. Sometimes or all the time, I am my biggest critic. And I think that affects me in all ways, mentally, spiritually. And I need to sometimes tell myself, you know, it's okay to make those mistakes, right? You know, everybody has a different path. You can turn things around if things go wrong, right? And failing is only just another way to learn something new, right? It's a lesson learned. So definitely practicing self-compassion, loving myself more, and just taking care of myself spiritually, mentally, physically.
Great, thank you. And on the last point, for Levita and Jocelyn, kind of like in the same realm, what advice would you give to our current students or alum who are also single moms and navigating academia as well as their professional careers? What advice would you give them?
Be clear. Yeah, be clear about your priorities. You know, when I was working on my doctoral degree, it was when I realized that you really have to be clear about your priorities. And I thought, you know what, my priorities were me and my health first, my family, my work, and then my education, what I was doing in school. And it really made it easy to make decisions because I would make decisions in that order. And you know what, so I think as a mother and as a working person, you have to be really clear. So all of those things came first in that order, and then everything else came after that. So it was easy for me to say no or say yes, depending on if there was room for that, depending on, so really being like, tell yourself, these are my, whatever your priorities are, these are my priorities, and you make your decisions in that order.
Thank you. And actually, I meant for Nikki to answer that last question.
No worries. I would quickly say, you know, never stop showing up for you because no one else is going to show up for you like you can. no one else is going to be determined to do for you like you can. And so you have to be there for yourself first. The other thing I'd say is never stop learning, because that's going to give you the opportunity to create your next opportunity. And the last thing I'd leave you with is remember that paths are not predefined. So leave yourself open to change constantly along the journey.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a very, very powerful statement. I think that everyone here, watching can definitely take something from that. So I do want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time out this evening, sharing your story, sharing your insight. It was definitely inspirational. Even in my journey, I took something away from this because, like I said earlier, I was very impressed in reading your bios, and I also had imposter syndrome, thinking to myself, how can I match up to these women? But, clearly you guys are setting the path and setting the foundation for others to follow. So I want to thank you again for taking the time out and being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And I'd like to also thank Tina, David Hahn, Michael Goodwin, and the Alumni Networks for putting this panel together and having this event available for everyone to enjoy and witness. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.